On a quiet morning by the river, Joe was startled when a large crocodile swam toward his boat, its eyes locked onto his. This was no ordinary encounter. The crocodile wasn't aggressive, but seemed oddly distressed. Feeling a mix of curiosity and unease, Joe hesitated before finally deciding to see what the creature wanted. As he leaned in closer, the reason behind the crocodile's behavior left him pale with shock. Joe initially considered calling a wildlife expert, but something about the crocodile's behavior made him pause. The creature wasn't acting aggressive, it seemed almost calm, maybe even desperate. Joe couldn't shake off the weird feeling growing inside him. "What is wrong with you?" Joe muttered to himself, watching the reptile closely. The crocodile didn't thrash or even blink. It just waited, as if urging him to follow. Instead of thrashing wildly, the crocodile remained calm. It floated in the water with an almost human-like patience. Joe's mind raced as he weighed his options. Should he get help or investigate further? His curiosity got the better of him. He decided this was too unusual to ignore. There was something more behind those reptilian eyes. It wasn't the typical predatory look. There was urgency in its calm demeanor. Joe made up his mind to follow the crocodile down the river. He started the motor of his boat cautiously, keeping a close eye on the creature. "Okay, let's see where you're taking me," he said aloud to no one in particular. The crocodile immediately began to swim upstream, gliding smoothly through the water. It was clear. The crocodile wanted him to follow. Joe's grip on the boat's edge tightened. As they moved, the crocodile occasionally stopped and looked back, ensuring Joe was following. Every few minutes, it would pause and turn its head, locking eyes with Joe. "All right, I'm coming. Just keep going," Joe muttered, feeling a strange sense of duty. The further they went, the more his heart pounded. He couldn't shake the feeling that something important awaited at their destination. His instincts screamed for him to stay vigilant. They traveled through narrow twists of the river, paths Joe rarely navigated. The area was dense with unfamiliar trees and foliage. Joe's sense of urgency heightened with each bend. His boat scraped against branches, adding to the tension. "What's out here that you want me to see?" Joe wondered aloud. His mind wandered to stories of hidden dangers. Despite the escalating anxiety, he pressed on, guided by the unusual behavior of the crocodile. The crocodile led Joe to a secluded part of the riverbank. The area looked recently disturbed. Joe scanned the scene, noticing trampled grass and broken branches. Something wasn't right. The crocodile pulled up to the shore and waited, almost as if it expected Joe to investigate further. His pulse quickened. "What happened here?" he whispered. The air felt heavy with the sense of a recent presence. Someone or something had been here, and not long ago. Joe stepped out of his boat and saw footprints and remnants of camping gear scattered around. The ground was soft, marked with various imprints that led further into the brush. Torn cans, a broken tent pole, and a couple of old sneakers lay abandoned. "Who left this here?" Joe murmured, trying to piece together the scene. The crocodile remained close, eyes alert, urging Joe to dig deeper into the mystery unfolding before him. Feeling a sense of danger, Joe carefully investigated the area. He moved cautiously, eyes scanning the ground and bushes. Each step was calculated, minimizing noise. "Better not attract unnecessary attention," he thought. The signs of recent activity were everywhere. He felt his breath quicken as he noticed the ground discolored in some patches. He couldn't shake the instinctive feeling that he should be on high alert. Something about the place felt off, menacing even. Joe found torn clothing and personal items strewn around. A jacket sleeve here, scattered papers there. He picked up a torn photograph, the image almost unrecognizable. There were signs of panic, of a struggle. Who was out here and where did they go? He wondered aloud, glancing at the crocodile. The creature seemed even more agitated now, its tail twitching. Joe felt the weight of urgency, a silent plea for help hanging in the air. Hearing rustling in the bushes nearby, Joe readied his fishing net as a makeshift weapon. His grip tightened on the handle, his eyes scanning the surrounding foliage. The sounds were unsettling, breaking the eerie silence of the secluded riverbank. He took a deep breath and inched closer to the source of the noise. Each step felt like an eternity, the tension building as he braced for whatever might emerge from the bushes. The crocodile seemed agitated, its tail twitching and eyes darting around. Its behavior emphasized the urgency of the situation. Joe noticed the reptile's restlessness and felt his own anxiety rise in response. "All right, I get it. Something's not right," Joe whispered, trying to steady his nerves. The crocodile's agitation was a clear indicator that whatever had disturbed the area was still a very real and present danger. Joe decided to follow a clear trail leading away from the riverbank. The path was marked by disturbed grass and bent branches, hinting at a recent and hurried passage. He took a deep breath and moved forward, alert to any sounds or movements around him. The crocodile kept pace, staying close. He hoped the trail would reveal what had caused this unusual situation. Every step Joe took was cautious and deliberate. As he ventured deeper into the forest, he found more signs of a struggle: broken branches, torn vegetation, and drops of blood scattered along the trail. Joe's stomach churned at the sight. "What in the world happened here?" he muttered. Each clue told a story of desperation and haste. The crocodile stayed close by, nudging Joe forward, almost as if urging him not to stop. The situation grew more puzzling and grim. Joe pulled his phone from his pocket, glancing at the screen only to see there was no cell service. He couldn't call for help, no matter how much he wanted to. The realization hit him hard. He was on his own. "Great, just great," Joe sighed. He was deep in the forest, with no way to reach the outside world. But the crocodile's presence gave him a strange sense of purpose to keep going. Determined, he pressed on, guided by the crocodile that occasionally nudged him in the right direction. Each nudge seemed to say, "Keep moving." Joe found solace in the animal's guidance, as odd as that felt. He trusted the creature, feeling a bizarre connection forming between them. He moved with purpose, his determination cutting through the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. Together, they navigated through the dense forest, step by step. Joe discovered a small, abandoned campsite that looked hastily vacated. Tents lay collapsed, and various items were scattered around as if left in a hurry. A damaged lantern hung from a broken branch. "Looks like someone left in a panic," he observed, carefully stepping around the debris. The crocodile remained close, its eyes scanning the area. Joe's mind raced, trying to piece together what could have caused such sudden abandonment. Among the remnants, Joe found a worn-out map and a half-buried backpack containing food supplies and a journal. He picked up the map, noting various markings and routes through the area. This wasn't just any map, it was detailed and methodical. "What's in here?" Joe wondered as he opened the journal. The entries were meticulous, describing observations and notes about the local wildlife, specifically the crocodiles inhabiting the area. Flipping through the journal, he read entries from a wildlife researcher studying the area's crocodiles. The researcher had documented behaviors and patterns, clearly dedicated to their work. Joe read with growing interest, the handwriting revealing a passion for the subject. "So, someone's been out here studying," he said out loud. Each page turned another piece of the puzzle, illuminating the context behind the campsite and the scattered belongings. The journal ends abruptly with the last entry mentioning an alarming discovery. Joe's eyes widened as he read the final words scrawled in haste. The tone had shifted from meticulous documentation to palpable fear. "What did you find?" Joe muttered, trying to imagine the researcher's state of mind. The abrupt ending left him uneasy. There was no clear answer, but it was evident that this discovery had led to the sudden and chaotic abandonment. Joe's thoughts lingered on the journal's abrupt end. The last entry was alarming, hinting at imminent danger. "What were you running from?" Joe wondered aloud. He pieced together the chaotic campsite and the sense of urgency in the notes. The researcher might be in distress. The weight of the revelation was heavy. Joe couldn't turn back now. Someone needed his help, and he was determined to find them. Joe's gaze shifted to the crocodile, now eerily calm. A thought struck him like lightning. The crocodile and the researcher were connected. The journal detailed her studying these creatures. Was this crocodile trying to lead him to her? He felt a chill run down his spine. "You're showing me the way, aren't you?" Joe mumbled, piecing together the odd behavior. The crocodile's urgency mirrored his own. Despite the fear gnawing at him, Joe decided to push forward. The terrain ahead looked challenging, but he couldn't afford to hesitate. Picking up his makeshift weapon, he said, "Let's do this." The crocodile started moving again, and Joe followed. Every step was a test of his resolve. He knew he was venturing into a potentially dangerous situation, but the stakes were too high to turn back. As Joe navigated the rough terrain, a wave of doubt hit him. "Should have brought backup," he groaned. The forest grew denser, its shadows deeper. But then he remembered the journal and the desperate marks left behind. His resolve strengthened. "I'm not turning back now," he whispered fiercely. Each decision, each step brought him closer to the truth. He pressed on, his determination outweighing the fear creeping in. Joe's heart skipped when he spotted a makeshift shelter ahead. It was crudely built, blending almost seamlessly into the surroundings. He approached cautiously, every sense heightened. "This must be it," he murmured, gripping his fishing net tighter. The crocodile stopped a few feet away, watching intently. Joe's pulse quickened as he neared the shelter, the sense of urgency boiling over. What awaited inside could change everything. The air was thick with tension as Joe stepped closer to the makeshift shelter. Faint, muffled sounds drifted to his ears. He strained to make them out, soft, weak noises. "Someone's in there," he whispered, gripping his net tightly. He edged closer, careful not to make any sudden movements. The crocodile stayed at a distance, seemingly on guard. Joe's breath quickened as he prepared to peek inside. Peering inside, Joe's eyes widened. On the rough floor of the shelter lay an unconscious woman, tied up and looking worse for wear. Each passing second felt like an eternity as he took in the scene. "Oh my God," he whispered, recognizing her from the journal. This was Dr. Emily Harris, the researcher. Joe immediately moved to untie her, his hands shaking but determined. The reality hit him hard. This was serious. Joe's fingers worked quickly to untie the knots binding Dr. Harris. Her wrists were raw, clearly from struggling. "Hang on, I've got you," he murmured, glancing around to ensure they were still safe. His heart raced as he freed her from the restraints. Once she was untied, he carefully checked for injuries. The memory of the researcher's notes fueled his urgency. "We need to get you out of here," he said, anxiety layering his words. As Joe checked Dr. Harris for injuries, he noticed unusual marks on her arms. They didn't look like typical bruises. They were strange, almost like punctures. "What happened to you?" he wondered aloud, gently waking her up. He knew every second counted. The marks only intensified his resolve to get her to safety. She stirred slightly, eyelids fluttering. Joe felt a surge of relief, but knew they weren't out of danger yet. Dr. Harris regained consciousness slowly, her eyes fluttering open. She looked disoriented, but quickly assessed Joe's concerned face. Who are you?" she asked weakly. Joe offered a reassuring smile. "I'm Joe. I found your journal and followed your crocodile." Recognition dawned on her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm Dr. Emily Harris. They captured me." Joe nodded. "We need to move. Danger's still close by." In a weak voice, Dr. Harris explained, "I was investigating illegal poaching activities in the area. These men caught me off guard and took me captive." Joe listened intently, his brow furrowing as he processed her words. Poachers? Out here? He asked, incredulous. Dr. Harris nodded, her expression clouded with fatigue. Yes, they've been smuggling goods using the crocodiles. I was getting too close, so they captured me. Joe's resolve strengthened. Joe reached into Dr. Harris's backpack and found a small bottle of water and some energy bars. Here, drink this, he said, handing her the bottle. She took small sips, regaining some strength. Thanks, she murmured. He opened an energy bar and gave it to her. Eat a little, it'll help. She nodded, nibbling slowly. Joe kept an eye on their surroundings, sensing they didn't have much time before danger closed in. They heard a loud noise nearby, causing Joe to stiffen instantly. We need to hide, he whispered urgently. Quickly, he helped Dr. Harris to her feet and guided her behind thick foliage. Stay low and quiet, he instructed. She complied, her breathing ragged but controlled. Every rustle and crackle in the surrounding area sent Joe's senses into overdrive. They couldn't afford to get caught now. The stakes were too high. Joe positioned himself near the bushes, where he had a clear view yet remained hidden. He tightened his grip on his fishing net, ready to use it as a weapon. The crocodile stayed close, almost as if guarding them. Stay calm, he whispered to Dr. Harris, who nodded slightly. Tension filled the air, every second stretching into eternity. Joe was prepared for whoever or whatever might come their way. Two burly men emerged from the dense thicket, their eyes scanning the area. Where'd she go? One of them barked. They were clearly searching for Dr. Harris. Joe held his breath, watching their every move. The men looked experienced and dangerous, their mannerisms sharp and alert. He knew he had to keep Dr. Harris hidden and safe. The crocodile shifted slightly, its eyes tracking the poachers cautiously. Joe hid behind a large tree, gripping a sturdy branch he'd picked up. His heart pounded as he listened to the poachers converse. We can't let her expose us, one whispered fiercely. The gravity of the situation dawned on Joe. These men were ruthless and desperate. He clenched the branch tighter, knowing it was his only means of defense. The poachers moved closer, and Joe steadied his breath, ready to act if needed. The poachers started arguing about their next move. We can't lose her now. We need to secure the goods, one said. The other replied, Look, we find her first, then deal with the shipment. Joe listened carefully, piecing together their plan. They had been using the crocodiles to smuggle stolen goods. His understanding of the situation deepened, recognizing the peril they all faced. He remained still, absorbing every word. Joe overheard enough to understand the danger the poachers posed. They were part of a dangerous operation, willing to harm anyone in their way. His sense of urgency doubled. Dr. Harris needed to be moved to safety immediately. The poachers' conversation revealed their brutal methods and determination. The stakes were high, but Joe knew he had to act decisively. He would have to outsmart them to ensure their survival. Once the poachers decided to move on, Joe sprang into action. He cautiously returned to Dr. Harris's side. We need to leave now, he urged, helping her to her feet. She nodded, trusting his urgency. The crocodile remained close, continuing to act as their unlikely guardian. Joe was determined to put distance between them and the poachers, his movements quick and deliberate. They moved swiftly but quietly, every second crucial. Determined to get Dr. Harris to safety, Joe quickly formulated a plan. We need to head back to the river. It's our best chance, he advised. Dr. Harris nodded in agreement, leaning on him for support. We can use the crocodile as a distraction if needed, Joe added. With a newfound sense of purpose, they began their trek. Every step was coordinated, their goal clear: reach safety and alert the authorities. As they neared the river, Joe spotted a hidden path cutting through the dense forest. This way, he said, guiding Dr. Harris through the undergrowth. The crocodile paced alongside them, its vigilance reassuring. Each step brought them closer to the river and potential safety. Joe moved cautiously, but with purpose, aware that their pursuers might not be far behind. The path, though overgrown, felt like a lifeline. As they walked, Dr. Harris started explaining her findings about the poaching ring. "These poachers are highly organized," she whispered. "They've been exploiting wildlife, moving rare species and goods through secret routes." Joe listened intently, the seriousness of the situation sinking in deeper. "They'll do anything to protect their operation," she continued, her voice strained. Joe nodded, fully grasping the danger they were in. They needed to reach authorities fast. Dr. Harris detailed the brutal methods the poachers used. "They trap animals in hidden snares and smuggle them using specially designed crates," she said. "Their plans are extensive, targeting species that fetch high prices on the black market." Joe's jaw tightened in anger. "We have to stop them," he said, his resolve hardening. The enormity of what they were up against weighed heavily, but they pressed on, united in purpose. Joe knew they had to warn the authorities, but they were still far from safety. "We need to reach the river and find a way to signal for help," he said, helping Dr. Harris over a fallen log. She nodded, her face pale but determined. "There might be an outpost nearby," she suggested. Joe's mind raced with possibilities. Despite the urgency, every movement was calculated. Danger lurked around every corner. The crocodile continued to guide them through the forest, appearing almost protective. It stayed close, occasionally glancing back to ensure they followed. "Why is it helping us?" Dr. Harris wondered aloud. Joe shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm glad it is," he replied. The creature's assistance was invaluable, giving them a slight edge in their desperate situation. Trusting the animal's instincts, they moved faster, hoping to outpace their pursuers. Joe spotted a sturdy branch and fashioned it into a walking stick for Dr. Harris. "Lean on this," he said, handing it to her. She accepted it gratefully, regaining some balance. "Thanks, Joe," she murmured. The branch provided much-needed support, making it easier for her to keep pace. Joe kept a vigilant eye on their surroundings. Every step forward brought them closer to safety, and every second counted. Together, they pressed on, determined to escape the poachers. The forest seemed never-ending, each twist and turn blurring into the next. Joe focused on the path ahead, guiding Dr. Harris with a steady hand. "We're almost there," he kept reassuring her, though he wasn't entirely sure. The crocodile led them confidently, a silent guardian in their perilous journey. Their shared goal was clear: reach safety and expose the poachers. Joe and Dr. Harris eventually neared a small outpost by the river. The sight filled them with a glimmer of hope. "We might find help here," Joe said, his spirits lifting. The structure looked old but sturdy. "Let's check for any communication devices," Dr. Harris suggested. They approached cautiously, aware that it could be a trap. The crocodile remained close, scanning the area with watchful eyes. Time was of the essence. Inside the outpost, they found an old radio, dusty but seemingly functional. "This could work," Joe said, wiping off the grime. Dr. Harris nodded, her hope renewed. "Let's try to send a distress signal," she urged. Joe fiddled with the knobs, trying to find the right frequency. The urgency of their situation pressed down on them, but they moved with careful precision. Getting the message out was their only chance. Joe sent a distress signal, detailing their situation. "We need immediate assistance. Illegal poaching operation. Immediate danger," he repeated into the radio. Dr. Harris stayed close, listening anxiously for any response. The static-filled air was heavy with anticipation. Finally, they heard a faint acknowledgement. "Help is on the way," a voice crackled through. Relief washed over them, but Joe knew they weren't safe yet. They had to stay hidden until help arrived. Joe and Dr. Harris listened intently, their ears picking up the distant hum of helicopters. "Sounds like help is on the way," Joe said, his spirits lifting slightly. Dr. Harris nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. But the noise also brought a harsh reminder. They weren't out of danger yet. The poachers would hear the helicopters too. "We need to stay hidden until they get here," Joe advised. Despite the hope offered by the approaching helicopters, Joe knew the poachers were still nearby. "We need to keep low," he whispered to Dr. Harris, guiding her to a more concealed spot. The crocodile moved closer, its eyes scanning the surroundings. Every noise seemed amplified, every rustle a potential threat. Joe's mind raced, strategizing ways to keep them hidden until help arrived. The urgency was tangible. Joe prepared for a final stand, using the terrain to his advantage. He scouted the area, identifying natural barriers and cover. "Stay here and stay quiet," he instructed Dr. Harris, her eyes wide with unease but trust. Gripping a sturdy branch, he hid behind a tree, staying alert. The crocodile stayed close, its presence oddly reassuring. He knew they had to hold their ground. There was no turning back. The helicopters finally arrived, their deafening sound filling the air. Authorities quickly surrounded the area, moving with precision and urgency. Joe watched from his hiding spot, feeling a mix of relief and tension. "Over here!" he shouted, waving his arms to catch their attention. Dr. Harris remained concealed, her eyes following Joe's movements. The sight of law enforcement swarming the area brought a sense of safety Joe hadn't felt in hours. The chaos drove the poachers to flee, realizing they were outnumbered and caught. Joe watched as they ran, trying to escape the grasp of justice. "Let's hope they don't get far," he muttered. His eyes tracked the fleeing men, tension easing slightly as authorities pursued. Within minutes, law enforcement apprehended the poachers, handcuffing them without much resistance. Joe's heart steadied, knowing their ordeal was nearing its end. Dr. Harris stepped forward, providing crucial evidence to the authorities. "Here are my notes and the journal," she said, handing over documents detailing the poaching ring's operations. Officers listened intently, their faces serious. "This information is invaluable," one of them remarked. Joe watched, feeling pride for Dr. Harris's courage. The evidence she provided would help dismantle the poaching ring, a hard-earned victory after their harrowing experience. Authorities commended Joe's bravery, grateful for his quick thinking and actions. "You did a great job," one officer said, clapping him on the shoulder. Joe nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. Despite the praise, a sense of unease lingered. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. Dr. Harris noticed his anxious look. "We'll get to the bottom of this," she reassured him. Joe couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that there was more to discover. The poachers' operation seemed extensive, and he feared they hadn't seen the last of it. His eyes scanned the surroundings, staying alert. "Something's still out there," he muttered. Dr. Harris stood beside him, her face showing determination. "We'll figure it out," she agreed. Their ordeal had only strengthened their resolve to uncover the full truth. As the situation calmed, Joe watched the crocodile swim away, its movements graceful and unhurried. "Looks like it's finally at peace," Dr. Harris observed. The reptile paused briefly, almost as if acknowledging them before disappearing into the water. Joe felt a sense of closure, but couldn't ignore the deeper connection between the crocodile and Dr. Harris. "There's more to this story, isn't there?" he asked. She simply nodded. Days later, Joe received a letter from Dr. Harris thanking him for his courage. "You saved my life," she wrote, her gratitude evident. But the letter also revealed a shocking secret. The crocodile had been trained by her to recognize and seek help from humans. Joe was astounded, finally understanding why the crocodile had sought him out. The experience left him in awe, realizing how much more there was to learn about these creatures. In the letter, Dr. Harris reveals a secret that leaves Joe stunned. She detailed how the crocodile wasn't just a wild animal, it had been trained. The crocodile's behavior wasn't just an anomaly, but a deliberate action resulting from her groundbreaking research. Joe's mind whirled as he absorbed the shock. The very creature that had led him through this ordeal was more intelligent and aware than he had ever imagined. Dr. Harris explained how the crocodile had been trained to recognize and seek help from humans. She elaborated on the intricate process she used, mixing food rewards with specific behaviors to create a bond of trust and responsiveness. This wasn't just any animal. It was the result of years of focused research and dedication. Joe could hardly believe it, understanding now why the crocodile's actions had been so purposeful. The unusual behavior was a clear result of Dr. Harris's in-depth research into crocodile intelligence. She had devoted countless hours to observing and interacting with the animals, pushing the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. Joe felt a mixture of awe and respect as he read her notes. The crocodile's ability to seek him out was a testament to its high cognitive abilities, something the world scarcely recognized. Joe was left astounded by the revelation, understanding now why the crocodile had specifically sought him out. It wasn't just chance or luck. It was part of an incredible experiment, one that had potentially saved lives. He marveled at the depth of the connection Dr. Harris had forged with the creature. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, leaving Joe with a newfound respect for both the researcher and her crocodilian friend. The letter detailed the special bond Dr. Harris had developed with the crocodile. She recounted moments that highlighted just how deep their mutual understanding ran. Joe read about how the crocodile responded to her commands, even in stressful situations. This bond went beyond mere training. It was a relationship built on trust and respect. Joe could feel the emotion in her words, realizing the immense effort behind such an achievement. Joe reflected on the incredible journey and the life-changing encounter he had experienced. Each moment replayed in his mind, now colored by the new understanding of the crocodile's behavior. The creature wasn't just guided by primal instincts, it had purpose and direction. Joe's reflections filled him with a deep sense of awe. He understood that his actions had been part of something much larger and more meaningful than he initially realized. He felt a deep gratitude for the experience and the newfound knowledge it had brought him. Joe realized how close they had come to danger and how remarkable it was that a crocodile had played such a pivotal role in their survival. This adventure had reshaped his perceptions, making him aware of the delicate balance between human and animal intelligence. The gratitude in his heart was profound, an acknowledgement of the extraordinary journey. Joe continued to share the story with everyone he met, spreading awareness about crocodiles and the dangers of poaching. Each retelling was a mixture of wonder and caution, highlighting the intelligence of the crocodile and the risks faced by wildlife. Friends and strangers alike were captivated by his tale, their interest piqued by the unusual friendship between man and beast. Joe's storytelling became a tool for education and advocacy. He maintained a connection with Dr. Harris, who kept him updated on her ongoing research. Regular letters and emails were exchanged, filled with new insights and discoveries. Joe valued these updates, feeling a continued bond with the researcher and the crocodile. Each piece of news was a reminder of their shared adventure and the enduring impact it had on his life. Their correspondence became a source of mutual inspiration and support. Joe's life was forever changed by the extraordinary adventure and the brave crocodile that had led him through it. The experiences had left an indelible mark on his soul, shifting his perspectives and priorities. Joe knew that this was more than just a remarkable story. It was a call to action. He remained committed to protecting wildlife and raising awareness, honoring the courage of the animal that had sought him out for help.